Aloha. I suppose there's some of you out there who've been around the garden long enough to understand how it is that organic gardening and farming came about in this country. Then again, I suppose there are also people listening to the channel who did not live through that experience. You know, it's sort of like you lived through a depression, you lived through war, you lived through Richard Nixon, whatever it is. You live through these different things in life. And some of us have the experiences and others don't. I was around when organic was not considered a viable alternative. I was an advocate of organic way back in the 1960s. My grandfather was an organic farmer in Wisconsin, and so we had the family history of organics. My aunt in Sacramento was an organic grower, and she raised rabbits and such. And so we had kind of a family history of this. Well, organic was, at one time, a grassroots movement. It did not have support from the government. It, in general, did not have support even from a major portion of our society. It definitely did not have support from major agricultural concerns and chemical manufacturers and fertilizer manufacturers. I got beat up pretty bad a long time ago by, implying that organic was a better way, that we should go that direction. It was better for the earth, better for people, better for everything, Well, as time progressed, and many of the major food distributors in the United States realized there was money to be made in organic food, U.S. government got lobbied to help create regulations to legally frame the term organic. At one time, the term organic was even questioned as to whether that had any validity because certain chemicals, for instance, organophosphates, are considered to be organic chemicals in chemistry, and they used to say, well, what do you mean by organic? And so it was a term that came about, and it's still in use, and it's going to stay in use because it just got placed there by the grassroots groups of farmers and gardeners and consumers and health food people that insisted that this would happen. Well, eventually, due to lobbying from corporate industry, when they saw there was profit to be made, the U.S. government decided that they were going to head and frame organic in a set of laws. I was there along with thousands of other people at that point in the 1980s when we were framing the laws and creating the laws that I gave my input. I wrote considerable length to our government on what I thought should and should not be part of an organic description. And also so did Monsanto, and also so did, I guess it must have been some of the waste management authorities or something. I don't know. Because in the process of generating these laws, it went through several stages where they asked for, submissions of proposals, then they condensed those, then they had a draft statement that went back out, and we looked at it again and resubmitted it, with notes and complaints and whatever. And two of the things that definitely I recall that showed up was that the genetic engineering guys wanted GMO crops to be part of organic. And most of us who originated the organic movement here as a grassroots in America said, no way, man, that does not represent what we're all about, And then we also had people who were suggesting that we should use sewer sludge as a fertilizer in organic food. And again, that was not within the mindset of most of us. And so we said, nope, don't do that. And the USDA did listen. The GMO crops are not made part of the laws, and neither was sewer sludge. The laws they wrote seem pretty good. And despite the fact it was a grassroots movement, and now it has become a legal status. It's a law, what you can and cannot do when you're saying it's organic. I feel there's a certain amount of protection for us within this. Previously, it was just word of mouth. Well, this is good, this is bad. Now it's stated. The laws are generally okay, but I see they've created a few problems. And one of the problems is that to get the organic certification, it's fairly costly. If you're a big farmer, it's not a big deal, I guess. For smaller growers like myself, I have really not seen it worthwhile to acquire the government certification because of all the paperwork and the money and the inspections and such involved. So I think, unfortunately, what it has done is for a lot of us who actually originated the movement and were responsible for it having been here to begin with, have almost been written out of it because, like so many things that the government will finally get around to making laws about, organic started in the street. It was grassroots. There was no politician out there somewhere that says, hey, y'all, we got to have your organic food. No, it didn't work that way at all. In fact, it was really the other way around. It wasn't until corporate agriculture said, hey, we can make money on this, so let's create the laws. So a lot of us that started it feel like we've been kind of written out of it at this point. And it's also, I guess you could say that I used to be able to just call my product organic on the, on the faith that I'm an honest man, I suppose, and if I said it was organic, it was, But I also see organic as having been a excellent step between standard chemical commercial agriculture and a better way, a more environmentally sound way of growing food. Organic was the transition because it did things in so much the same way as standard agriculture, but it was really specific about, what would be used and how it would be done. But again, I see it really only as a transition. Myself and thousands, maybe millions of other people are actually the folks that originated what does it really mean? What does organic really mean? And there's a lot of different opinions on that, I can tell you right off. Every time I talk about how a solution may be an organic solution, but then I say, well, you want to spray this bacteria, people go, oh, no, I'm organic, I don't spray. Well, that's not what organic means. It's actually never what organic meant. Organic growers have always used certain insecticides and certain insect controls. Those controls were generally very, very low toxicity. Things like, oil, things like bacterias like BT or spinosad, the kaolin clay. There's a whole lot of different things that people have used over the years, but as I say, I see organic as having been the transition. It is not the final end product. So my question is, where do we go from here? I'd like to see a couple of things happen personally. One is, I would like to take clean agriculture back to the grassroots level. In other words, right now it's become a corporate thing, organic, and it's a legal description. Well, at one time, the description was the people's description, and I'd like to see it go back there. Now, we can never turn organic backward, and we don't want to. We want to leave organic as it is and improve on it, but I don't see organic as being the complete solution. In a very short way, I will tell you why. The reason why is that we understand a whole lot more about biology, environment, and natural sciences now than when the organic movement started. And organic, in a way, robs Peter to pay Paul, to use the biblical description here. Because if you need nutrients to grow a crop, you're going to go somewhere and source that nutrient. and you're going to bring it in, you're going to deposit it on your farm, okay? And say it's chicken manure, all right. Well, the chicken manure is going to make your crop grow good, and it's going to grow it without a whole lot of concerns for toxicity or anything like that. But wherever that manure came from, whatever fields that were feeding those chickens is where the manure actually should have gone. All right. If you need these complete cycles, and organic is a half cycle. They get stuff, they bring it in, they deposit it on their land, but wherever it came from ends up with a negative. I'd say it's my major complaint with it. The other complaint I have with current status of organic is that organic used to be ours, and now it's the federal government's and corporate industry. I think we need to reclassify, because there's a place we can go with farming. I don't know what its name is yet, and I guess that's what I'm seeking. If anybody else has this same thought, that maybe you have a good name for this. Organic caught on like wildfire. We got people around these days that talk about permaculture. It's a more holistic idea. It's not just growing food. People refer to food forests. I hear a lot of that here in Hawaii. There's another term of kind of a new sort of concept, and it does include part of what I'm looking at. So does permaculture, and that's that plants live in associations. They live in guilds, and these guilds support fungi, bacteria, and a lot of biology that isn't really covered under organic. Okay. And so I think we need a new name, and we need a new classification for how food is grown in even a better way beyond organic. And I'm suggesting that the same grassroots group of people out here that brought about organic growing could be the ones to help bring about the next generation of where this is going. I would like to see the people take this back. Eventually it's going to go full circle, and whatever we create is going to end up becoming law again sooner or later if it's successful, because corporate industry is going to look at it, and the lobbyists are going to tell the government, they're making money on this, we need to get laws. And so it's sort of a vicious circle. But I am advocating the idea of a sort of more biological and environmental type of agriculture that includes bigger issues, that includes the fungi that live in the soil, that sees the fact that plants do not necessarily require external inputs. That's where I'm going with this. I don't haul much in here. Most of what I do on the property is by using one plant to feed another. And so I'm working within the environment, within the biota of the plants and the insects and the fungi and so on, creating an environment where food can be grown without hauling in hardly any inputs. Whereas in organic, you haul in as many inputs as you're going to haul in if you're a commercial chemical farmer. That's just the way it goes. They're just going to be different types of inputs. I'm looking at a different way of seeing this, where those inputs are not necessarily required for everything. And I'd like to see a whole school of thought come back up during the 21st century like the organic did in the 20th, with more understanding and more knowledge that we currently have. We currently possess all of this. And basically to start the whole thing all over again from the ground floor, considering that organic, in my opinion, is a transitional way of getting out of a big problem, which was the chemical way of doing agriculture. But we still are not where we need to be with this. And so organic is a transition. And many of us are actually creating the next generation right now. I haven't seen that it's particularly organized yet. And so it really doesn't even have a single name. It doesn't seem to have any organizations or any publications. Like at one time we had the Organic Gardening magazine, Organic Farming magazines, Mother Earth News, and things like this that help fuel this thing as a grassroots level. We don't have it, but I'm suggesting that maybe it's time that we start one. The advantages would be even better ways of growing food, better conditions on Earth for all creatures, whether they be microbes, earthworms, ladybugs, swans, or even people. Uh, yeah, that's what I'm saying, and I think that that it would benefit us as a society if we were to take back the grassroots level of agriculture again. I'm not suggesting kicking the government out of regulating, but all these good ideas, they start in the streets. They start in the streets 2,000 years ago. They start in the streets 200 years ago. You know, we have the story of Christ. We have the story of the Constitution, our Bill of Rights, and all these great things that have come up. Women's rights, ending slavery, on and on and on and on. You better believe that governments have complied, but they were not the ones that created the ideas. The ideas flow through society. Well, when you live long enough, you realize that. You hire your politicians, you put them in office, hopefully to enact appropriate laws. But in general, not a one of them has ever had an original idea. They may have, but it's not likely. By and large, if our elected representatives are doing their work right, what they're doing is representing what the people want. I don't even want to go into that. Generally what they do is represent corporate industry, energy barons, and blah, blah, blah. That seems to be the case. But the fact that we have laws for organic means that sometimes the government does the right thing. So there you have it. My question is, where do we go from here? Organic, I believe, is already behind us. And it's time to look for something new. Aloha. Have a great day and have some great crops this summer.